you all for coming tonight. My name is Andy Kilgore, by the way. I'm the head bartender at Bourbon. I think I mentioned I've been bartending for 15 years. I started at Number 9 Park in 2003. And at that point was when the classic cocktail revolution was sort of happening, and I was lucky to be in on it early. It's happening in New York earlier, but they're smarter than us. They're way ahead of us, of course. We lag behind in Boston, and I'm thankful for that. I like Boston. We're a little more laid back. At that point, I went from being a slinger to really learning how to craft cocktails. And so now I've been doing that since '03, so that's about 8 years now. People use the term mixologist. I like the idea of being a mixologist, but I'm really a bartender. I'm less of a scientist. But I do think that bartenders today are a little bit more like chefs. We're constantly making syrups and infusions and using fresh ingredients and muddling and perfecting recipes and talking about them and writing about them. And there's a community, and there's all kinds of online communities for bartenders to go back and forth. And so that's what I do. It's funny, I went to Bible college, so this is not at all what I expected to be doing. Although I like to say that I have remained in the spirit. The home of whiskey in America is Pennsylvania. George Washington made in the last year of his life, in 1799, well, he would have lived a long time, 1799, made 11,000 gallons of rye whiskey in 1799. That's a lot. I mean, and he was making it 10 gallons at a time. I mean, these guys didn't have giant factories, you know. They were all pot stills, and he had a grist mill, he just had the water running through the wheel, and he had guys doing it all by hand, so 11,000 gallons, and he was probably selling it for about 50 cents a gallon. That was a lot of money back then, you know. So he was rich. Burned down sometime shortly after he died. But bourbon and rye whiskey are uniquely American. The Kennedys came to power on the back of Prohibition. They ran whiskey from Canada, and that's how they got their political influence, and that's how eventually we had a president who was on the back of whiskey, which I really dig. I think that's awesome. And what's great about Mixers, there's two things great about it. It's all small batch. It's all high quality, well controlled. You pay a little bit more for it, but it's especially if you like whiskey, it's not that much more. It's certainly not any more than Knob Creek, which is a big batch. It's basically the same price. It's hard to come by. Also, it's actually a historic landmark. It's the oldest. The distillery is the oldest distillery in America.